Welcome to the 8th grade Math Homework Helper Series. Tonight's homework is linear and nonlinear functions. Start by taking a look at question number 2. Label the following graphs as linear or nonlinear, and then state if it is or is not a function. If we look at A, you can see one of the ways that will determine if it's a function or not is by using the vertical line test. So I shall pass the vertical line through it. You can see it touches in more than one spot, so that indicates that it's not a function. And it's also not linear. If we look at B, you can see that B is not linear, but it does actually pass the vertical line test. So we could say that it's not linear, but it is a function. If we look at C, C certainly is linear, and it also passes the vertical line test, only touches in one spot at any one time. So C is both linear, and it is a function. If we look at D, D is certainly not linear, but it does pass the vertical line test. So we can say that it's not linear, but it is a function. If we come down to E, E is also linear and passes the vertical line test. So that gets yes to both. If we look at F, F is not linear, but it does pass the vertical line test, so it is a function. If we look at G, G is interesting because each one of these pieces, if you think about this, it's an angle, and an angle is made up of two rays. Each one of these would be, but connected together the way it is, it's not linear, and it does not pass the vertical line test. So it's not a function. And H immediately fails the vertical line test, so it's not a function, but it is linear. Let's take a look at question 2F. We have, do the following tables represent linear or nonlinear functions? If the table represents a linear function, write an equation in the slope-intercept form. So for step number 1, we need to figure out what the rate of change is for x. So if we go from -1 to 3, that's a rate of change of +4. To go from 3 to 1 is going to be a rate of change of -2. And to go from 1 to 4 is a rate of change of +3. Step number 2, we're going to find the rate of change for y. To go from 0.5 to 8 is a +7.5 change. To go from 8 to 2 is a -6 change. And to go from 2 to 16 is a +14 change. So, looking at the rate of change of y over x, we have to ask ourselves if the change in y over the change in x is equal. If it is, then it represents a linear function. So as I come over and look, I can see -6 over -2 would reduce down to 3. 7.5 over 4, that's going to reduce down to, well, it's certainly not going to be 3. And 14 over 3 is going to reduce down to 12 something. So none of these seem to be equal. So that indicates to me that since they're unequal, that this table does not represent a linear function. And if it's not linear, then it represents a non-linear function. Because it was not a linear function, I do not need to write an equation in the slope-intercept form for this one. Next one, 2i. I'm going to start off by determining the rate of change for x. We go from 5 to 1, which gives us a rate of change of -4. We go from 1 to -2, gives us a rate of change of -3. And to go from -2 to -5 also gives us a rate of change of -3. Coming to the y side, to go from 6 to -6 is a rate of change of -12. To go from -6 to -15 gives us a rate of change of -9. And -15 to -24 is also a rate of change of -9. So, we now need to ask ourselves if the change in y over the change in x is equal. So as we look at these, we can see, yes, they're all equal to 3. If I break this down, I'm going to get a +3. If I break this down, +3. Same for this one, +3. So because all of these are equal to 3, the table does represent a linear function. I want to put it in y equals mx plus b form, and since 3 is my slope, I'm going to say y equals 3x minus 9. I can check myself to make sure that that works out, and I can take I'll take 5 and 6 from up here in my table, plug that into the y equals 3x plus b. So I have 6 equals 3 times 5 plus b. 6 equals 15 plus b. If I subtract 15 from both sides, that gives me negative 9 equals b, which is what I had said in the original equation, so that's a check. Please use the problems that were done for you in the homework tonight to do the additional problems that are in your homework. Remember, the key to success in math is not only working hard, but working smart.